And welcome back to Lantern Corp Videos. Today's Lantern Corp video comes from us from Awesome Bro and Wade Wilson, who asked the question, what if Kratos, what Lantern Corp would Kratos be in? Now, some of this comes off as pretty obvious to me. Like, there's some very obvious ones, and there's a couple that stand out as like a possible, like, did we think about this one? So as always, let me go over, because I think there's 4 solid ones with an argument for a 5th one. I didn't include the image here because I don't sadly think that's the case. I'll get into it in a little bit. But let's get 2 out of the way right now that I don't think he qualifies for. Despite being a demigod, I don't think he's a white lantern. The reason I don't think he's a white lantern is due to the fact that he's not really good at keeping people alive. Like, the whole idea of being a white lantern is to be a representation of life, to be, to cherish, to nurture, and protect life. And unfortunately, while he has sired a child, has, loved and cherished women before, and doesn't actually want to be, a warrior anymore, he gets caught up in that shit still, and he still ends up killing he's killed an entire pantheon of gods. Nearly twice. Ragnarok proves there's still gods out. We know Odin's still around. We know Thor's still around, at minimum. But he's killed at least one pantheon of gods and the Titans. Like, this man has kind of, like, just completely gone against the whole idea of life. Which does just bring us into the first possible Lanticor, then, is death. Like, this man is drenched in death itself. The amount of people this guy has killed, even before he had the ashes of his family clinging to his skin and all that, and went on a rampage. Like, this guy was a general in the army. Like, this guy was a soldier, and he murdered God knows why. There's the reason the whole game series is God of War. So I think death is a very reasonable suggestion for him. I don't think he's a hope lantern, sadly. While some characters place hope in him, sure, and he does have hope too that he can either live a life or fulfill his purpose and all that, it's not something that is like large enough that he could qualify for. And he's lost his faith more than enough times, especially especially when you look at like God of the War, the most recent game, not Ragnarok, the one prior that where it was in the Norse mythology. It's clear that he had left everything behind. Like, nope, we're done. So yeah, to be fair though, I also don't think he's an avarice lantern. Kratos, what's the best way to put it? Well, Kratos certainly had a goal in mind, and he was doing anything he could to achieve the goal, get more power, weapons, whatever. Once the goal was done, he settled down, had a family, lost his wife, but he was content just living his life. But, things just won't let him do that. So I don't think he's an avarice lantern. I think, obvious one, Rage. The man that literally wears the sins of his past on his flesh. And that is literally the driving force of the first 2 games was, rage for what happened to his family and everything that happened there. Just unbridled, unchecked aggression and rage. In the last game, it was definitely more in check. He controlled his rage a lot more, but he still is a guy who's very short-tempered, very short-worded, and very curt with his son. But at the same time, it's clear he has mellowed out, but he still wears he wears the ashes of his loved ones on his skin. It's clear he still harbors a lot of rage and resentment, especially towards gods. So, yeah, I would say Rage is a perfect, particularly for young Kratos. For the first 2 games, Rage might be his definitive Lanticor for Durst 2. Once you get to the next 2, I mean, we've seen the trailer for Ragnarok. Rage is still a very good candidate, but there are 2 other options, because he's tempered out a bit come the most recent games. And one of the other ones is Will. Now, to be a lantern of will, you have to have great willpower and be able to overcome great fear. He's had to overcome literally the gods of Olympus and the Titans themselves and the Norse pantheon of gods. And he's still taking them on. So, and whether or not he felt fear at the time, I don't think we actually know, but the amount of willpower it took to do that, oh, he could be a Green Lantern, no problem. Now, in terms of Indigo and in terms of Sapphire, Indigo, the man does have compassion. He's not compassionless. It's not his driving force, though, so I think we can cut that right out of the equation. Sapphire's the one I didn't include, but I felt it was important to mention, because initially he went into a rage because he lost his wife and child. He was tricked into, I think, killing them, if I remember correctly. So you could make an argument what he did, at least in the first game, was all about the love he had for his wife and child that was driving him. But I think the problem is that while that was his love was the catalyst, it got overwhelmed by blinding rage. So I think really that's the problem. Is that while you could definitely say he's a man who loved and did what he did partly out of the love he had for his family, he's a man who was driven by a blinding, burning rage. So I don't think love can qualify anymore, but that's where older Kratos comes in, where we get the most recent versions of Kratos from the third and the current game coming out, Ragnarok, is that because he's tempered out, you could make an argument for him now having a bit more of a drive motivation from love. My problem with that is, though, we don't know what the relationship with his wife it was like. And while it's clear he does love his son, it's in his own way, which is very stern, gruff, and chaste with him. So, I don't know. If someone wants to argue love, I wouldn't put too much of a fight against it. But that leaves us with the last one, and that's fear. And when you wipe out an entire pantheon of gods single-handedly, and their parents, like Kronos and all that, the Titans. Actually, now that I say it a lot, I can't remember. To be fair, I never actually played the games. But I do remember a lot of the story. Did he wipe out the Titans? I think he did. Maybe. I know he kind of created like the Greek version of Ragnarok. When you wipe out, so many, gods or, divine beings, you gain a reputation as being quite formidable and very scary. Fear, I think, would be another great one for Kratos. So that ultimately brings us to the final part. Which one of these, fear, will, rage, or death, does Kratos belong into? This is one of those ones where I think any one of these is actually a pretty solid option, depending on which part of his life you get him in. If we're talking about most current version of Kratos, well, actually, let's go back even further. Let's stay with like the first two games, and then the second two games are, because the second two games are different. Kratos has changed at that point. He's nowhere near as hell-bent on destroying as he was. In fact, he's not hell-bent on destroying. But if we're going by the destroyer, let's call him Kratos the Destroyer from the first two games. Red, I think, is almost the definitive. With, I think, honestly, what I think, yellow being the second, black being the third, and green being the least likely. All of them being strong options, but I'll still go with rage as for the first versions of Kratos. First two versions of Kratos. The third game plus this new one, which we don't know much about this new one, by the way. We only know what we've seen in the trailer. And a little bit here or there. That one's different. I want to say the rage actually is the least likely now. Because while the rage is still there, he wears literally the ashes of his wife and child on his skin. While the rage is still there, it's now clearly been tempered a bit. And he now has different leases on life besides that. So he just tries to live a life and it's just not allowing him to do that. Like the gods aren't letting him do that. So I think rage falls into the fourth category. I think the fact that he's trying to make a new life for himself, I think that puts black as the secondary option, because despite him trying to try to live peacefully and quietly, he's still taken God knows how much life in his history. So he's still drenched in blood, war, and death. But because he's not actively trying to do that anymore, despite the fact he still does it in the games, I think that puts black on the back burner a bit as third, which leaves us now green and yellow. And if I'm going to be honest, number two is probably going to be fear. And the reason for that is people keep going to F with him. And these people don't show immediate fear. Now, after, like, Thor's kids, they F with Kratos and his son. But after he beats the crap out of them, like, they're pissed. They're scared, pissed, shitless of him. They're pissing their pants over this. But I think the fact that most of the people he initially meets aren't initially afraid of him means that the fear takes a bit of a backside. But the fact is, he had to overcome some things too, like reimplanting the blades of Sparta in him. Dealing with his father in hell, like the image of his father in hell. Dealing with the truth about who he is to his son. Like, overcoming that fear is a great deal. So, weirdly enough, older Kratos that we get in the most recent games, I think, is closer to a Green Lantern, whereas younger Kratos in the first 2 games is almost definitely a Red Lantern. So, red for young Kratos, green for old Kratos, but all these Lantern rings and Lantern cores are honestly good options no matter which version you're looking at. It just, I think, matters at what point in the games you catch him. So that is my thoughts on Kratos. What do you think Kratos' Lantern core is? Do you think it's one of the 4, or do you think it's any of the 5 I brought up and didn't think it was? Could you make an argument for them? Let me know in the comments below. But thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Hit that bell if you want to be notified. I'll be back tomorrow with the next part of the Naruto Zanpakuto series, which I think is either part 9 or 10. I'll double check on that. Or possibly 11. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you folks later.